It has been said that average people want you to stay average. Welcome to the Breaking Average podcast, the podcast designed to challenge you to break the mold that average has on the world. Each episode offers insights directly from those who choose to break average every day. Now, for the latest insights, here are your hosts, Paul Gustafson and Rick Morris.
Welcome to another edition of the Breaking Average podcast. This is episode 12, and of course, I'm here with my great friend, Paul Gustafson. How you doing, Paul?
Hey, Rick, I'm doing fantastic. You're looking good. I know that you've been working out, doing some cool stuff with Orange Theory Fitness, I believe. So you got to unpack that.
I'm coaching now. Yeah,
you're coaching it. Yes,
right.
And just taking folks through just burning calories every day, right?
Yeah, I had a really cool moment on Fridays. I was coaching one of my first classes. It was a 5 a.m. class, and there was this younger girl, an older lady that are in that class, and they kept looking at me kind of funny, and I just let it go all the way to the end. And I thanked them. I was like, "Hey, thanks for being graceful. As you know, I'm learning how to coach this class." I was like, "But the two of y'all were on either side of me in my first class that I ever took," and they were like, "Oh, that's how we know you." And I was like, "But if you remember, that was like a little over a year ago." Yeah. And I was like, I was dying, and both of you were like, I think afraid for me, like scared, and that, but they were also, just like, you can do it. They were so sweet and wonderful, and it was really cool to kind of call them out and say thank you for doing that, because that allowed me to fall in love with this journey, and now my fitness journey has gone from being sedentary, can't walk a mile, to coaching Orange Theory Fitness part-time now. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Dang, that's awesome, man. The fact that they were scratching their head trying to figure it out. And here you are. I mean, you are really, if people saw the metamorphosis of where you were and where you are today, I mean, you look like a different person, Now I know you sound
channel though, right, Paul?
Yeah, they can see it, watch us on YouTube. You can see the difference. Go back to watch a couple of the old episodes, which are great, but watch Rick today, and kudos again to you, man. And your coaching, which is like the perfect setup for the book that we're talking about today, huh?
That's right. The Mentor Leader by Tony Dungy. And, we were just talking on pre-show. I've got like 15 pages of quotes, so I have no idea how we're going to do this in the time frame that we normally do it. But first of all, thank you for picking this book. But why this book, partner?
I was going through a process of coaching. I love Tony Dungy. I love football. I love sports. And I was actually coaching high school soccer, varsity soccer. And I had read A Quiet Strength, which is another Tony Dungy book. And then this book came out, and I grabbed a hold of it. And I've got some mentor friends. And this book really pulled me in a way that I didn't expect. So Tony Dungy truly is a mentor leader. I don't know if you remember a few years back, Michael Vick was in some trouble.
Yeah.
And the person that kind of guided Michael Vick through that process and got him upright, and I think Michael's doing pretty well today, was Tony Dungy. He mentored him. And I know there's other stories too, and there's stories probably untold of how Tony Dungy, I mean, he practices what he preaches, right? So he's truly this mentor leader. He's one of my favorite all-time coaches. And this is kind of like the secret. The secret to Tony Dungy's success is described and captured in this book. And so that's kind of what I was hoping for, and that's what I discovered. So yeah, that's kind of why I picked this book. But now you had heard of it.
I had heard of it, but I had not read it.
Yeah.
Right. And of course, I'm a huge fan of Tony Dungy as well. What's interesting though, I found out why in this book, but Tony's not a front and center guy. Like he's an analyst, sure. And, people talk about him, but he's not like the Bill Belichick's or these people that are always like front and center and in the conversation. Now, when somebody ever asks who's the best person you ever played for, you'll hear Tony's name come up quite a bit. But for some reason, like like a Bill Parcells or these people that are brash and out there and that kind of stuff, Tony's almost this quiet, behind the scenes, like you could almost forget about Tony if other people didn't talk about him so much. And that's what I found out why in this book. I can't wait to share.
Yeah. I'd love for you to share that, but let me ask this question, right? You're talking about the comparison to other coaches. we know a little bit about DISC, right? Personality kind of measurements in terms of who we are, what we tend to be. I mean, great example. Bill Belichick, Bill Parcells, those coaches were a different personality style than Tony. What would you say Tony is?
I think he's high S. I mean, he's super high S, and he's got a lot of C in him too.
Yeah.
Whereas like a Belichick and Parcells are high D's. You know,
Exactly.
Yeah. But I don't think I've seen a more supportive coach.
Yeah.
Right. So that high S to me is what would come out with Tony.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. And here's the reality that, at least in the environments that I'm in, there are a lot of introverts, there are a lot of S folks, there's a lot of C folks. This is encouraging. You don't have to be a successful leader. You don't have to be a D, and D's are great. Love them.
Absolutely. Just even say that. Look, you don't have to be a D to be a great leader.
But there is that, but there's that presumption like, oh, well, I'm not a leader like quality. I've heard people say that, like, well, I don't really have, or he doesn't have, or she doesn't have that leadership quality because they're not a D. What? Wait a minute. There's plenty of examples of great leaders who weren't Ds that were very successful. Tony Dungy being one of them. You could say Abraham Lincoln was one, based on the historical records. There's so many. We could have just a discussion on that, just to kind of lay out all these great leaders that reflect the different spectrums there.
Maybe we do that. Maybe we do a series on DISC leaders. That sounds fun.
Yeah, could be good. All right, but let's dive into this book right here, man. This is so good. I love the framework for it, right? So he's got essentially 9 components to it. I won't unpack them all here because we got so much to talk about, but he talks about the mandate of a mentor leader, which we kind of cringe on because we hear that term kind of used in a negative way now. But I love the framework, again, that he sets up for that in terms of what the focus is for that mentor leader. So the mandate, the mindset, the maturity of a mentor leader, and then the marks of what we should see in that. And then, which is interesting because here's a great book on how to be a mentor leader. And certainly he represents that mentor, but he's really, I like his approach in terms of not being so self-reflective about him, right? He could show examples of lots of examples of his leadership and highlight him, but he's a humble guy, so he doesn't do that. He just does a really good job of laying this out. The marks, the moments, the model, the means to be a mentor leader, and the methods. And then finally, I love this last chapter where he talks about the measure of building other lives of impact, passing it on. So those are sort of the frameworks. We can unpack some of those things if you want, but man, what a great book. And it starts off just solid right away. If you just read chapter 1, you're going to get something out of it for sure.
And the first thing the old Irish proverb that he had in there, I thought was great, but it says, you've got to do your own growing no matter how tall your grandfather was. Love that.
I saw that. Yeah, that was good.
Yeah, but right out of the gate, the mandate, right? Because that's so early in the book. The mandate is that you've got to continue to grow. You're not done.
You're not done.
And the quote that I really liked in here, he says, after a while, people see through the talk when it doesn't line up with the walk. And we've had a lot of people, we've got a lot of quotes, got to talk the talk, walk the walk, all that stuff. But I love just calling it out that people will see through the talk, right?
Yes.
And basically that established for me, for Tony, is that he leads by example.
He does.
Because he is that high S, he is that more quieter type of coach. In fact, even on the sideline, one thing I always watched with him, she had the coaches that they're always yelling at the refs, and they're always, and Tony was such a quiet coach on that sideline, but people, when they came off the sideline, normally like with the Belichick or that somebody, he's yelling at him and they're kind of like trying to walk by him. The people that came off the sideline for Tony came to him, and they looked to him, and you could barely even see him regard him, but he said something quiet, calm, and what they needed to hear, and off they went. And so that seeing through that talk, that boisterous, always got to be in your face kind of thing, he figured out how to lead his people just through simple actions. And I found that fascinating.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, how encouraging would it be to have a coach like Tony Dungy, right? To have somebody who doesn't berate you on the sidelines. I mean, it seems like every coaching show or movie that I watch, the coach is in the face or in the grill or upset. Or, I mean, I was just watching Coach Friday Night Lights, just some clips of that, and I love the actor, but he's reflecting, and he's performing in the constructs of what you typically expect with a coach. And I was thinking, boy, imagine if he did a Tony Dungy representation as a coach, what a difference that would make. And then I started thinking, wow, what if we could all do that as leaders, right? Because a coach is a leader, and they're influencing their whole team, and they're trying to create something that they, certainly the win now mentality, I get it, but it's not just about the win now, it's the relationships. He makes that emphasis very clear on the front end in terms of that mandate. So
well, you just tapped into one of my all-time favorite shows, though, man. I love that whole series, Friday Night Lights. That just is it Kyle? I can't remember the actor.
Kyle. Gosh, I can't remember his last
I almost
name.
said Shanahan.
No, it's not Shanahan.
But my point is that guy, he could really evoke.
Kyle Chandler.
There it is. Yeah, he phenomenal actor.
Good actor.
And so one of the tenets of coaching all the time, right, is you got to win. The numbers, that's the measurement. And he says in this first chapter, he says, at the end of it all, sometimes you reach the organizational goals you've set, and sometimes you don't. Mm-hmm. But either way, if you are a leader, people's lives should be better because the influence you've had along the way. So right out of the gate, he was like, I measure my success based on how I've grown others, not what the bottom line is. He even calls that short-sighted leadership. Is short-sighted leadership only focuses on the bottom line, only focuses on wins and losses. And I think that's the unfortunate thing about what happens in the college game and the demand of the fan base is these coaches only have 2 or 3 years. And if they don't immediately start winning and bringing something to it, they kick them out. But, there's no chance to set a culture there. There's no chance to really build any level of influence that quickly. And so I found that interesting.
Yeah, and I love that culture comment you just made, because he emphasizes that. I can't remember if it was chapter 1 or maybe certainly different points during the book of establishing that culture, how critical it is. And by the way, didn't you love the action steps at the end of each chapter?
Yeah.
Those were so powerful, right? So guys, if you're watching this or listening to this podcast and you don't have this book, I would recommend you go grab it, go to Amazon. I like to have, the Kindle and the hardback, right? So I don't have it with me right now. It's actually at work because we've got some mentors there. And sometimes we talk about mentorship. And I say, look, if you want the go-to de facto standard on mentorship, read The Mentor Leader by Tony Dungy. It's a great book. And those action steps are really powerful if you yourself want to be a better mentor to somebody else, or if you're trying to groom other mentors, which is what I get excited about, because that's where Tony really takes this book. He says, look, this is certainly helpful and influential for you, right? If you follow these steps, if you follow these practices, but the opportunity that you have is to groom and grow other mentor leaders. Mentor leaders build mentor leaders is what he says. And that he makes that point a couple of times, and that really resonated with me. I'm like, you know what? I need a mentor in my life. But guess what? I can be a mentor to others, and I can mentor others to be mentor leaders. And that's encouraging. That's exciting.
It's when you give back, and we've talked about servant hearts and things that we've done and had an opportunity to, like right now, I'm having this opportunity to teach junior achievement again. And for anybody who wants to start to be able to build mentors or influencers, look into junior achievement. Like all these people try to get into the high schools and stuff. Oh, I've got this great program, and principals' offices get called all the time, but junior achievement's got an established curriculum, but you have to put yourself into it. I've been doing it almost 8 years now, Paul, and I've been mentoring seniors. And we do a business plan, and there's a scholarship that they won, and we've won like the last 8 years. Our kids have sometimes taken first, second, and third, but they get money for college. The point is I get so energized when they're the ones coming up with the idea and we're just kind of shepherding it along, right? So they have to come up with a product, they have to come up with a business plan, but when they can start to see that their idea has merit, and that's that kind of quiet mentoring in the background, just asking questions, getting them to think through different things. I get so much energy from that. Like I'll come back from a Wednesday class and just be on fire, start making all kinds of decisions at work, just grabbing that momentum and running. But it's really that pouring into other people and sharing that experience, especially when it clicks in for them, that really becomes a source of energy.
Yeah, for sure. And look, I would just echo what Rick just shared, guys. Look for those opportunities that you have to kind of step in and be a mentor. And that's a great example that he shares. And you can groom young mentor leaders too. Like one of the things I did a few years ago is Little League soccer or any sport, pick your sport, Rick, right? And as an adult, maybe you've coached and you're like, I don't want to coach again. Well, wait a second. Here's what you get to do. Maybe you have a son or daughter at home and they need a challenge. And maybe it's an opportunity for you to groom them as a mentor leader. And what can they do? Maybe they're a young teenager, maybe they're 15, 16 years old. They can be a coach in that little league. And you can be alongside of them and support them and mentor them in their role as coach to help lead other kids. It's phenomenal. It's one of the best experiences I've ever had, is to be in that space where I could kind of pass on some of my my coaching philosophy, my leadership ideas, but allow that son, in both cases, both my kids did this. It was really phenomenal, and especially when you have a couple of them there, they work together and you just guide them. That's what a mentor leader does. You kind of guide them. It's fun way to go.
I'm going to dovetail on that for a second, because I coached youth football when my son decided he wanted to play in kindergarten. And so starting in first grade, I became one of the coaches, and we followed the kids all the way up until fifth grade. My son decided he didn't want to play anymore. And so I didn't coach. And of course I lost touch with some of these kids as they went on to, middle school here. Well, they've all come back together now in high school. And so my son's a freshman in high school, and I went to the football game Friday night, and great football game. And a lot of my kids were there and were coming up and hugging on me and talking to me. And I hadn't seen some of them 2 or 3 years. Like, they've grown, some of them around the field. But to see the regard that they had for me, because I was that mentor leader for them, in their youth, and having fun with them and coaching them on the fundamentals, it's really rewarding when you see them, grow and start to get into themselves, really grow into their talents. That was a fun moment, Paul.
Yeah, it is. It's great. I mean, when we get to be in that position, like Rick just shared, and be able to see the impact that we made, that may have been years ago, and you kind of think, well, it's all forgotten. And to realize that, no, it wasn't forgotten. You seeded something. Like for what you did was you seeded something that really outlasted the season. Right? It outlasted the season. You impacted them for life. That's what mentor leaders do. They impact them for life. In fact, Dungy, what he says is, if you take one thing away from this book, let it be this: relationships ultimately are what matter. Relationships are what matter. And he's a person of faith. So recognize that when you pick up this book, you're going to get a little bit of Dungy's faith with it too. And that's all right. And it paints a picture, because what he's doing is he's using those biblical principles, that faith, to kind of set the foundation for how to be a mentor leader. And so he talks about relationships with God, but he's talking about relationships with other people too, how important that is. And he says the question that burns in the heart of a mentor leader is simply this: what can I do to make other people better, to make them all that God created them to be? I love that. I mean, I double yellow highlighted that, circled it, like, yes, he gets it. That's what I want. So
I wrote in my book, Project Management That Works, I wrote this concept, and in chapter 2, he took it to another level. But I wrote a concept called the 100% 10% rule. that says if a project fails as a project manager, 100% of that comes to me. I don't care what happened, 100%, especially if I'm telling someone, and I'll tell a story on that in just a second. But if it goes well, only 10% of that credit. You can take some. And then Tony Dungy says in this book, he says, am I prepared to have great success and not get any credit for it?
Yeah.
And then he says, if you do it right, as a mentor leader, you may make it all but impossible for other people to give you the credit.
Yeah.
And so that took it to that new level, right? Here I'm like, all right, 10% can come. So that's still a little bit of ego holding on, right? And he's like, no. If you do it right, like none of the credit comes to you. But you know that in your heart, you know that they couldn't have gotten there without you, but there's no reason for them to say that. And that's that humility that you were talking about that's coming through. But coming back to that 100% rule, I just did this with Brendan, Paul. We had something that we really want to do for January 1st. We've been talking about it since June.
Yeah.
As it's shaking out, it's not going to happen. And everybody, everyone else was telling him that it was okay, that everything was fine. And I started to introduce some language, and I could have been a little bit more direct in my language, but I started introducing language that I didn't think it was going to happen. And then we ultimately had this meeting where he's finding out it's not going to happen. He's like, whoa, why am I not hearing this? And the next day I was like, look, that's 100% on me. I'm in charge of the win. It's 100% on me, dude. And he turned around and lifted me back up. And it's not a tactic, but it's the truth. If I'm the project manager, I own 100% of it. By owning that, I'm doing what I'm paid or supposed to do. He's the one that's going, no. All these other people had opportunities to tell me that you're the only one that came and told me that the truth, and I appreciate it. So it became this bonding moment. But the point is a lot of people get afraid to take that 100% blame because they feel like they're going to get dinged for it, or it's going to go on the record or whatever else. And it's quite the opposite. When you take that 100% accountability, you're taking that leadership fall for the team. Yeah. And sometimes I've done that, and I was shown the door, but I still took the fall for the team, and those people still reach out to me, right? Does that make sense? Yeah. But what I loved is here I am doing that principle, but still holding on to the 10% credit, where Dungy's like, no. You get none of it, kid. None of it. I loved it.
Yeah. It is kind of like, really? None of it? Really? But the truth of it is there's so much satisfaction that you have as that leader, knowing that you've made that impact in the lives of other people. So you don't need the affirmations of men and women outside of it. You can see it for yourself. You can see the impact, right? And so that's really cool. I mean, if any of you guys follow the 5 love languages, Gary Chapman, one of those, the most predominant love language that people crave and want and desire is affirmation. Mm-hmm. And mentor leaders, and I'm guilty of this too, Rick, right? We want, because that's sort of my love language. I love affirmations. Who doesn't, to be honest with you? And so I love to hear that affirmation. But what he's saying, what Rick's saying, guys, this is so important. If you do this right, you won't need to seek the approval of men or women and the affirmations that they give, because you're going to live and lead in the way that reflects the values that you care about and the relationships that you care about. And you'll see the impact. And like Rick just shared, 5 years later, when that season was long gone and nobody remembers who won or lost, but they still remember how you coached them. They'll always remember how you made them feel. You'll see it. It'll come back. And it's just so positive. And that's what Tony's talking about. Just kind of that long term. He's talking about the infinite game. If you guys follow Simon Sinek, he says, look, it's not about the short season. It's not about the next win. It's not about setting up your fantasy football so that it wins this Sunday. It's about the long play, the infinite game. So, yeah, good stuff in this book. And talk about last lines, that last chapter. First of all, he's got that Q&A bit at the end of the book. So I'll leave that for our listeners and viewers to kind of unfold. There's a great Q&A at the end of the book, but that chapter 9, that's sort of the final chapter. I always like to go back and reread those things, because it tells you where he's heading. And I do want to go back to his discussion of vision and mission and value. So teeing you up for that, Rick. But
Sure.
let's just unpack this chapter 9 stuff, because I know we can't
Well,
go off.
before we do, there's I know there's just one point in
Yeah.
chapter 3 that really spoke to me, and then we'll
Yeah.
jump into it.
Yep.
But he's talking about Coach Knoll, and he said, as Coach Knoll pointed out to me, every player loves to work on his strengths, but only the great ones work on their weaknesses. Coming to grips with our strengths and our weaknesses is essential to our roles as leaders. As a mentor leader in particular, if we hope to have a positive impact to mentor and lead others, actively seeking and working on our weaknesses. And that is that uncomfortable space. We
Yes.
love to work in our strengths, but having our weaknesses pointed out and having to work on those, that's what personal growth is all about.
It's so true, right? And I love that chapter. The Knoll story is great. He talks about, hey, in order to be an effective mentor leader, we've got to operate within the framework of self-awareness, being aware of where our, not just our strengths, but our weaknesses, and growing those things. So in fact, I love what you do on a daily basis with Growth Day, and really helping people in that area. And you yourself, the story that we talked about at the very beginning, with where you were to where you are today, there were some weakness areas, and you shore those up. You've been working on those things, and would you lose 50 pounds again? I can't remember how much.
Oh, it's 130, but yeah.
130 pounds, guys. It's a different Rick Morris in front of you.
I lost a third of me, man. Dropped
That's
them
awesome.
off the river somewhere.
Yeah. And that's just a powerful story. I love it. In fact, there was a guy that came in to work the other day, and I hadn't seen him in 12 months. I've seen him on WebEx calls and everything else, but I hadn't seen him physically live. And his name's Steve. And Steve, if you're watching, man, kudos to you. So he comes in, and I'm like, he's got a mask on, because we've got to make sure we got our masks inside the building. So I was like, who is that guy? And then I recognize it's Steve. But Steve looks different. Something's changed about Steve. I mean, it looks like he's been working, like he's ready for the movie set. I mean, he's like, wow, Steve, dude, you've been working, you lost a few pounds, haven't you? He goes, yeah, I lost 55 pounds. I'm like, dude, that is awesome. I said, that's great. He goes, yeah, I feel so much better. But it was hard. It was hard work. It wasn't easy. I wanted to quit. And I don't know if you went through that experience too, like, you've got to have that vision for the future. And that's what Tony's talking about here, is making sure you have that vision mindset, because I think that gets you to where you need to go. Right.
Well, so bringing it even back to Tony, he talks about walking the walk. And, I've talked to my kids about being healthy, but I was unhealthy. I've talked to, other people. In fact, one of my friends that just reached out to me, just saw a picture of me recently. She's like, what'd you do? Because she used to encourage me to go run. And I was being facetious, but funny with her. And I'd be like, nah, that's never happening, and now I've got this passion to go run. But the biggest part of my health journey hasn't been me feeling better, is watching my kids feel better.
Yes.
My daughter and I both have been overweight for quite some time. My daughter works at the gym now as well. She's lost, 35, 40 pounds in the last couple of months, and just doing really, really well and feeling good about herself, feeling positive. And, she tells all of her friends that she watched what I did and decided to come along. And there's several people that are in my sphere of influence that have decided to come to the gym with me or start working out, or have reached out to me just going, hey, you were an inspiration. And there's people from Maxwell team that are reaching out to me going, dude, I just saw you and started working out, and I'm down 20 pounds, just out of nowhere. It's incredible, just by doing what you're supposed to be doing, and taking care of yourself, how that can impact and mentor and lead others without saying a word. I didn't get up and lecture anybody about it. I just decided I wanted to be healthier and went and did it. And that's has been the switch for some other people.
Yeah, that's good. Great stories, man. This is good. It's encouraging. It's inspiring, So guys, wherever you're at, set those goals, have that vision, One of the things that he talks about, Dungy talks about, is vision, values, mission, vision, mission, and values. It's a great chapter on that. We've talked about that on some of the other podcasts, but he does a great job in this. But let me unpack chapter 9. This is really good, and this gets us to, finding a conclusion to at least this podcast this week. So chapter 9 is titled "The Measure of a Mentor Leader." And then the subtitle is "Building Other Lives of Impact." And I want to encourage everybody, this is sort of a pre-tip and challenge. What if that was your mindset? Building other lives of impact, right? Not just your impact, but the other lives of impact. How powerful would that be? So he says this. So what's the point of all this? If we lead with character, courage, and competence, if we cast a compelling vision, all right, and if we inspire people to work passionately to achieve a common mission, if we model the message and recognize the moments when we can make a difference, if we educate, equip, and elevate the people around us, what does it all add up to? What does it all mean? He says very simply, the mentor leader adds value to the lives of others to make the lives of other people better. If leadership isn't about us and what we can get for ourselves, which I have suggested it should not be, then the fleeting treasures by which so many people gauge their worth, the promotions, the raises, the accolades, the awards, are no longer measuring sticks. Instead, the success of a mentor leader can be measured with things of significance. Things of significance, lives of impact, lives that are better because of your leadership. And he goes on. But then he says, let me encourage you to start right away, right where you're at, with the people right around you, doing something as simple as engaging with them and talking. Sometimes the smallest things we do have the biggest impact. Just start. I love that. I love that.
He makes me think of Saban, and what's interesting about Nick Saban, love him or hate him, and first of all, they just came off a loss to Texas A&M a few weeks back, which was their first loss in quite some time. And he was actually pretty excited about it because there's been so much success. It's hard to continue to coach. But I think one of the most undervalued things, or what a lot of people don't see, is we call it as a joke, his coaching rehab program. But not only does he have this incredible success on the field, but he continues to get these coaches who were once great coaches or had a lot of promise, who failed some way, got fired, something like that. They end up joining his staff and then end up going back into coaching. You look at Lane Kiffin, Lane Kiffin was this prodigy. He leaves Tennessee, gets fired from USC, can't hold the job. And next thing you know, he's the offensive coordinator at Alabama. And then just a few years later, he's head coach at Ole Miss and doing a great job. But Steve Sarkisian's the same way. He's got this incredible coaching tree. But Kirby Smart, at Georgia, you got Jimbo Fisher, who actually was the first coach first one to actually beat, right, his mentor. So far Saban's been undefeated against his former coaching mates, and until Jimbo Fisher finally did that. But the point is as much success as he's had on the field in championships, he's really been focused on rebuilding these coaches' lives, which giving them an opportunity to come to a championship team and learn the process and then go back out and make it their own. That to me has been huge.
Yeah, that's a great example. And he talks about, Dungy talks about coaching trees, and that's really what you're talking about here. We all have the ability to create coaching trees in our lives, right? Think about that, right? You don't have to be a Nick Saban. How cool would it be to be in that position, but to realize the fact that you are in that position. We all have a platform. This is what he talks about platforms in this book, by the way, which I find fascinating. We're all given a platform to make an impact and add value to other people. We can all create those coaching trees of people whose lives we've affected, and we can see that passed on. So I think that's powerful. Well, are you ready to dive into tip and challenge?
Absolutely.
All right, man. I'll let you lead off on this one.
Yeah, I'm gonna dovetail right on what we were just talking about. He says in chapter 9, mentor leaders should always look to add value to the lives of others. And then here is the key point for me: even if it means delegating authority to those they have mentored, who are ready to be elevated to new levels of leadership and responsibility. So my tip first is to look around you and look at what the potential is of the people that you influence, whether that's your
Mm,
family, that's your job, or whatever. And then the challenge is to go build your own coaching tree. The challenge is to start to identify and even think back. There's a great exercise that Paul Martinelli taught us. I'm sure it came from somewhere else, but they call it the stick man. But you can go back and bucket your life into decades, right? So you can
yeah.
look from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, and then start thinking about, like, who are my friends? What were the key memories I have in those time frame? I'd like you to do that, but think about who are the people that you felt you influenced, or people that you felt you've mentored, and where are they now? So, after reading this book, I started to do that myself. And I remember my favorite team, and I've talked to him about them a lot. What was at AmSouth Bank, I built my first PMO. It was the first time I actually was doing that with the intent that I was going to write a book about it. And if I look at the people that were there, there's, one guy owns his own company, another one girl who was on the floor. I saw talent in her, pulled her in, trained her as a PM1. She's now like an Uber consultant for a huge firm as a project manager. That's my coaching tree,
Yeah.
and of course they did all the work. It's just, we had that one opportunity, that one moment to inspire, and they took it. So having that opportunity to go back and kind of look at what your coaching tree is, but then identifying what your coaching tree is going to be in the future as well. That's my tip and challenge, Paul.
Love it, man. It's a great tip and challenge. And I love that exercise of kind of going back and reviewing, going back into your life. Here's what I would encourage you. I'm just going to build on that, Rick. This is such a good tip and challenge. Go back, look at the mentors in your life during each of those decades. Who are those mentors? All right. Then to Rick's question earlier to you, who did you mentor? All right. So the first part is, I want to encourage you to thank a mentor. All right. So I got a 3-part tip and challenge. Go thank a mentor. There's mentors in your life. Maybe it's been a while since you reached out to them. But if you get a chance, please go do that. All right. They're not looking for accolades, but how encouraging is it to share that with somebody else? Like, hey, thank you for mentoring me, because that puts you in a position to be a better mentor yourself. And start with that. Like, okay, who have I mentored? What I would encourage you to do is do the circle of influence, right? The old compass that we've talked about here, I believe, before. Just draw a circle, right? Wherever you're at, just draw a simple circle. I'll do it right here for those watching. A little circle. That's all you got to do. And put north, make it a compass: north, south, west, east. And for those who are curious, west is on the left.
You had to look again.
Okay, I did. All right. Well, I don't know how it shows up mirrored over here. Like, that's goofy. All right. So anyway, that's your circle of influence. You're the dot in the middle. Okay. Make sure you influence yourself. But there are others in your life where you get a chance to be a mentor. And even those above you, you get a chance to mentor somebody above you, which is, how odd is that? But it's true. You can be a mentor to somebody who's senior to you. You can encourage them. You can guide them. You can let them know, hey, look, love the values there. Highlight some of those things, encourage them, because they need that support. All right. East and west, those are alongside of you, you can mentor them. Those below you, you can mentor them. There's a circle that you have of folks that you can mentor. And I would encourage you, thank a mentor, be a mentor. And then the final part is this: build a mentor. Build a mentor. It's the opportunity for us to be able to pass that on, to create that legacy, to have a vision beyond the current and the now, and play that infinite game. Be a mentor. So those are my three little sub tips and challenges to everybody. This is such a great book. Love it. I want to encourage you guys to go visit us on our website, breakingaverage.com. Just go check it out. We got some cool resources there. And Rick, I always enjoy just connecting with you, man. It's so much fun. But
yeah, and I really like your point of you also can influence and mentor up.
Yes.
You mentorship has no levels. You don't have to be above people to mentor people. You can mentor people anywhere you are.
It is so powerful. A mentor leader has nothing to do with position or title. We can all do it. You know, I've actually had my youngest child mentor me on some stuff, right? Allow that to happen. Don't be, you know, at least for me, I'm saying this to myself, maybe this is reflective of somebody else. Don't be that guy that's not able to come down, you know, off the pedestal or wherever you're at and be mentored by somebody else that's junior to you. There's a huge opportunity there. We can all learn something from somebody else. Let's always be growing. Always be growing.
And once again, Paul, I'm inspired by our mission of breaking average. So join us again next time. We're going to unpack another book, and we love you for being our audience. Reach out to us, find us on social media, hook up with us. Let us know what you're thinking and any ideas you have on the show. Anybody you'd love us to interview, we'd love to hear from you. So until next time, we'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Breaking Average podcast. If you loved what you heard, please take a moment to subscribe. All opinions and comments expressed in this podcast are those of the participants and do not reflect the opinions or views of any of the advertisers, producers, or platforms. This show was produced by R Squared Multimedia. A special thank you to Milestone Melodies for our theme music. As you continue your day, what is one action that you can apply from this podcast to your life? Tune in for our next episode as we continue to challenge everyone to break average.